Right.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another Steampunk Academy Drunk Science Virtual Science Happy Hour. Hope everyone's doing okay out there. So this week we have some great guests, but I want to first talk about how we get to sit here and enjoy some great pizza.
All right. Tonight, MidiCi's Neapolitan Pizza sponsored us. Justice is having the prosciutto margarita, and I'm having the forest pizza. It's got mushrooms and ham, and rosemary on it, and olives.
And they didn't give this, Red Rock didn't give this to me for free, but it's pretty tasty.
Oh, and also MidiCi's Pizza wants you to know that they're open from Sunday to Thursday from 4 to 9 p.m. and they're available for curbside pickup. And they're also open Friday to Saturday from 4 to 10 for your late night snackies. And they have specials on Monday, which is a $5 Monday margarita pizza, not the drink, the pizza. And on Tuesday, buy one get one pizzas.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Right. So this week is actually pretty cool. We have kind of a more of applied science where we get to learn about how we're failing at all of our sourdough starters, hopefully. That seems to be all the rage these days with all the extra time we have. So hopefully we'll get to that. Because what we have is our steampunk board members, Jesse and Isaac, out there in beautiful sunny Oregon, are going to be interviewing Amber and Robyn, who are up more in our neck of the woods, up here up in Cache Valley around Logan. And they're going to be talking about ways to homestead, cooking skills, and approaches to that, like eating for one versus feeding a whole herd, and whether or not corn is actually bad for you. I'm interested about that. And I heard a fun story about corn, so I hope I hear that again tonight. So with that, we're going to pass it up to Jesse and Isaac, and they will take it from here.
All right. Every single car in our entire neighborhood is driving by right now. Hopefully that's not a horrible sound. But if anything seems super loud, I'll just mute us. But hi.
Robyn and Amber.
Hey.
With us. What are you two drinking?
Homemade sangria. We opened an old bottle of wine we dug up, and
by that she means a 2013 Sonoma blend.
Thank you, Robyn.
An old dirty bottle.
Did you make the wine too?
No, I couldn't. I was going to be drinking our Glacier Lily wine tonight, but I realized I left it in the storage unit. We did a lot of home brewing last year, and we actually went and picked a bunch of Glacier Lilies today, so it would have been perfect to have that wine, the first bottle. But
save us a bottle, please.
Yeah, I will.
We'll be back soon. Isaac, what are you drinking?
Oh yeah. So we found Jesse found a really cool place up here when we went to a bar back when we could. So we have this Jester and Judge, and this is their blueberry lemon. Cider, hard cider. There's so many ciders.
I love cider.
Yeah, it's so very good. And we went up to their little tasting room it was just across the border in Washington, and I'm forgetting the little town, but it looked over the river, and we got to drive on the Bridge of the Gods. And so that was a lot of fun. But yeah, they make a bunch of really great little ciders that are an interesting mix of flavors. And yeah. Are you drinking anything, Jesse?
I'm actually here repping for those of us who choose herb over liquid imbibing, since I'm in the lovely state of Oregon right now and such things are legal. So repping the leaf, folks.
Utah does have medical. So
yeah,
that's happening.
We'll see what that's like when we get home.
Yeah. Cool.
So let's get to the questions.
Yeah. No, about their background.
Oh yes.
Why did you folks choose to cook stuff?
Oh,
you go first.
Okay. Well, Isaac, you used to work with me back in the day. I mean, we were all poor and we needed jobs. So that's the one.
Well, and
that
you
I
got sick
picked.
of like being an EMT because you were doing that for a minute, but like
Yeah,
that's like
during the 2008-9 recession where everybody lost their jobs, so did I. People stopped, just like now, going to restaurants, and the economy crashed. So I took a little side note, but I learned a craft and a skill, and I've been building it for about 15 years. So.
Yep. I started my bread job at a Great Harvest in southern Utah. My brother-in-law was connected and he hired me, and I just kept doing bread. I worked at a few different bakeries with that chain, and then I also transferred to a couple different bakeries and finally ended up at Crumb Brothers, which is an artisan bread business. I attended college for a short while in the ceramic arts. So I'm definitely a maker with my hands. And that seemed to work out well for me. There's not a lot of bread jobs, and I kind of just stuck it out and persevered, and I'm, intelligent enough to problem solve and delegate and manage. So I got to a point where I'm able to run the whole bread and pastry program there now. It's the only job like that in the valley.
It's the only artisan bakery where she's working with sourdough.
That's intense.
yeah. Well, and I mean, you showed me that bread book. So like you're doing math, like the ratios of being able to make a lot of bread from that recipe. Like you still have a lot of intense, like food sciencey oriented stuff that you've had to like piece together and learn and pick up from the different stuff that you've worked with. So tell me, like, is that hard? Like, yeah, tell me more about that.
It's scientific, it's mathematical, it's artistic. So those, you need to be, able to do all three of those things if you want to really hone in on your craft with your skills. But it's not necessary if you want to dabble and make some stuff at home. So that, on the one hand, if you want to pursue it as a career, you need to make sure that you can do math, that you can understand the science, and that you can be creative and artistic. But if you're wanting to do it at home, it's okay for you to get inconsistent results and see different things happen and not worry about it too much. I think a lot of us are armchair professionals, and we think, I want to do this really well, or I have expectations that I'm going to have Instagrammable results, and that's just not the case, and that's okay.
Cool. So the first question that I kind of had in mind was, what are some of the basics of what you would consider starting level? I want to be a chef. What are some of the things that people should focus on if they wanted to like start doing more cooking, start getting into it?
As far as like people that are interested in being a chef professionally?
Yeah.
Well, I think you need to consider your age. It's a young man's game. Seriously, when you're standing 12 to 15 hours a day, when you're not able to sit down, eat, drink, you have to be able to stand in a hot kitchen. And when you're 50 or 45 or have a health problem, it's hard. As someone that has had upwards of 15, 16 people on a schedule at a time, there's always those people that just physically can't do it. So it's a physical job, just like a dairy farmer or any farmer or anyone that has a blue collar physical job. It's something that is hard and it is not rewarding, and you don't make a lot of money. And it hurts and it's pain. But
so we're hearing that you gotta really want it.
Masochism.
Yeah, you gotta really want it. But in all of that taken into consideration, I would choose it again because I really truly enjoy cooking. whether it's frying an egg, which I've done the math, and I've actually probably fried more eggs than anyone in Cache Valley. I did it. Like, I did the math. It's hands down. But yeah, I mean, if you really enjoy watching butter brown in a pan and cracking an egg, and that gives you the sensation that can carry you through a 15-hour day, do it.
And how much does it help? One or both of you can answer this question. Is there any benefit to having your wife there to back you up and keep you going on the really hard days?
I can answer that.
No pressure, y'all.
Well, I mean, for the last 7 years, I was running a diner that was recently on Triple D, dinner, drive-in, blah, blah, blah.
Is dives one of the words?
Yeah. It's got
dinners and dives.
Guy Fieri. But we did 1.2 to 2 million a year, and it was slinging hash and eggs and turning tables, and the true nitty gritty of running a restaurant. Sorry, what was your question?
I can't remember.
Go to the next question, dear.
Scaling it back a little bit. So somebody doesn't want to be a professional chef, but they want to get more into cooking or get better at cooking. What are some of the skills you would recommend?
Oh, YouTube.
Watching YouTube.
No shit.
I'm pretty good at that.
Yeah, no lie. You can buy all the cookbooks you want, but to be able to visually see somebody do something with their hands is a tool that didn't exist, a few years ago. So it's an incredible tool.
We've been watching Julia Child's cooking episodes lately, and that's been awesome.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Very cool. So if I want to make really, really great food just at home, I don't need to worry so much about learning how to become a master knife cutter, throwing stuff around, flipping pancakes in a pan. I just need to decide what kinds of food I want to make and then go and look up how to do it online and follow along some of the greats.
It would be good for you to pick out a handful of entities to follow.
Okay.
If especially in baking, I feel like if you're bouncing around recipes online, a lot of people don't really know what they're doing.
No, I would definitely recommend going off of a recipe you find in a book that you like versus recipes that you find on someone's blog, because the people that write those recipes aren't professionals. They don't have that understanding, and you're not going to get consistent good results from recipes they're just kind of making up.
So find somebody who's tried and true the things that you want to do, not just somebody who's looking for followers and sensationalism and to tell you the story of when they went to Rome for their college internment or something.
Yeah, every recipe is scroll.
I feel so seen right now. Thank you for mentioning that. It's so frustrating.
So you got a question there, Jess?
Let's see. In regard to recipe adjusting, what's the best approach?
Yeah, because I've heard that it's not necessarily just double that recipe or half that recipe, that you should actually have a greater understanding of the ratios. So if I want to make more of this, I don't just need to double everything in the recipe. I need to actually know a little bit of the ratios, because I might need actually less or more of this particular ingredient.
I definitely just double everything, so I have no idea what I'm doing.
Well, for me with the bread, I always go by weight. Weight is way more important. If you do 2.5 cups of flour versus 5 cups of flour, you're not really doubling the recipe, because you just cannot get an accurate measure. So I always translate everything to weight, even when I do recipes online. I use a scale all the time. And then when you are increasing for baking, you're utilizing techniques that take more or less time depending on the volume in your mixer. So if you need to develop gluten, then you're going to need to mix longer or shorter depending on how much is filling that bowl. You know, if you've just got a little bit in the bottom and it's like spinning, 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 or if you've got a medium amount, that should develop quickly. But if you have a large amount, it'll take longer again. So you're always mixing, or if you're creaming butter, you know, you want to cream it to a consistency for cookies or for tea cakes or whatever. And you know, do you want to be plugging air into that? Do you want it to just be creamed so that your sugar granules are a certain size so your cookies spread nice? So you do need to understand exactly what and why you're doing that, and then implement that for your size batch. So you're looking for what's happening versus how many minutes, you know, you're supposed to do something.
Cool. And does elevation matter, like particularly in baking?
It does a lot, but I haven't had to deal with it because I've just always been here. But I did look that up a little bit, and you know, Wheat Montana has all the information, and it's written down pretty intuitively and tells you the why, so you can really understand the science of why you're adding or taking away. So I would recommend that people just look that up.
And where did you say?
Wheatmontana.com.
Okay,
and because Montana's up there.
Okay, because I have had such a hard time coming from predominantly ever having cooked in Utah elevations to coming out here to Oregon, where we're basically sea level. The differences I do not understand and don't know how to acclimate for that.
And we have a trailer oven, so
yeah, also that a gas small trailer oven.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I was thinking about a lot of folks that went out and like panic bought a bunch of stuff, and a lot of folks maybe didn't necessarily buy things that were going to keep well or that they could actually make a combination of meals. And so I wanted to pose a question to y'all about, like, what should, if you're prepping to maybe have to stay at home for a long time, what kind of things should you buy? What kind of things go well together? What are some good like mix and match meals that you could think of, kind of looking at that approach?
We like our pantry, what we've been buying lately is you know, pasta sauce or lentils or beans, noodles, crackers. But so we just kind of have been using canned goods a lot of the time.
Yeah, I would recommend like thinking, okay, like worst case scenario nutrition. If I wasn't able to leave my house, how can I assure that I'm getting proper nutrition? And I would say complex carbohydrates. So things that are dried, but still could make a complex carbohydrate.
Yeah.
So beans and rice are the classic combo, right?
Yeah.
Feeds an entire people. And it's for a reason, because of those, you know, it gives you everything you need. And then things like, you know, that our Mormon moms had in their basements and still currently do, and it's for a reason. So it's dried milk powders.
I don't really do that.
Yeah. Flour. You know, Amber does a lot of canning over the summer, so we have cases of peaches and sugar water, which, you know, fuels your brain. Your brain needs sugar. You need hydration, and you know, all the vitamins that are in peaches. We can some tomatoes. Yeah,
I love tomatoes with every meal because the vitamin C in them helps your body absorb calcium. So I try to actually develop a meal that is based around what's going to help me absorb. I try to keep a lot of meals plant-based, so I'm thinking about just the nutrition of everything going into it. And sometimes I throw shit in there that is like not good because I'm like, this fulfills all the nutritive needs, and then nobody wants to eat it, and then I have to eat it for like 4 days.
Yeah. So I guess the takeaway with that is beans are a superfood. Rice is good because it's easily stored. And right now, with COVID, I had to order pork recently for the restaurant, and we're seeing a lot of closures in the pork plants. So if you have a local butcher, I recommend going to your local butcher and just buying bones, because you can always take your bones out of a freezer, put them in a chest freezer, make a broth, and you get plenty of nutrition, fat, and amino acids from that.
Cool. Sweet. So like stews, broths, rice and beans. And if you can get into baking a little bit, having flour and stuff to be able to do. Okay.
Yeah. Here in Logan, we have Central Milling, which is used nationwide and is a really famous high quality miller. They use it in San Francisco. Amber and I went to the San Francisco Baking Institute, and they were using Central Milling. So yeah, if you have a local miller, if you have a local butcher, definitely this is the time to support them.
Yeah.
Cool. A big question. Is corn bad?
No. No, corn is a sacred grain. It's not bad. You know what our society and what big farm corporation, conglomerate, whatever does with corn is bad. So highly processed corn products are bad. But actually I didn't even stage this. I've got some flour corn.
We just have a bag of corn within reach.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of grains. I grow grains. I'm really into growing food. So let's see.
So Amber's a baker and a farmer.
Where's my camera at?
She's trying to show you corn.
Maybe. Yeah. So anyways, this is whatever. This is a flour corn that I've grown with my buddy, and I grind it fresh. Sometimes I make porridge out of it, like a cream of wheat. Sometimes I throw it into a bread. Sometimes I nixtamalize it and make tortillas, hominy and a stew. So this is some really great foodstuffs. When you nixtamalize it, you can absorb the niacin, which is some B vitamins, I think.
And what is that?
I think it's just a B vitamin. I can't remember.
No, the process that you're saying.
Nixtamalize. So it's Amber, sorry.
You take a food grade lime and you boil and soak the corn, and so it'll get bigger. Like when you cook beans, right? Your corn grows. You kind of wash it and rub it in your hands to remove the husks. And it kind of changes the makeup of the corn a little bit, and they use that for tortillas. They wet grind it and dry it.
Because, correct me if I'm wrong. So the ancient people, for corn kernel, you have a hard exterior husk. So to be able to get to the endosperm, which is the nutrition and the part that you grind for corn flour to make tortillas and masa, you have to remove the exterior of the corn husk, and that's what hominy is. So when you see traditional Mexican cooks, or if you go into a Meximart, you see cans of hominy, and that's been the nixtamalized soaked corn, so they can access the nutrition and then they can grind it.
I didn't know that they were the same thing. Thank you.
Yeah, super cool.
Yeah, and so a lot of the corn that you're eating is just commercially grown, genetically modified corn. And what is bad about genetically modified corn is that you might potentially be eating glyphosate, which is Roundup. So that's getting sprayed on the crops, and that's causing a lot of problems in our society today. Some of them are scientifically proven, some of them are just speculated about. But I think that that's a different episode.
Yeah, Amber's had to look into a little bit of that because she's a baker. She's had to consider what all of this gluten allergy is about. And there's a lot of studies that show that it's Roundup related, that it's because of the glyphosate.
Yeah.
Really?
So like if somebody who is maybe not full on celiacs, but has trouble eating gluten, if they like grow their own grains and are treating them well and they're not, spraying them with a bunch of pesticides, they might have less like digestion problems from having their own corn, their own wheat. Sorry, not corn, wheat.
Yes, correct. So the mill that we get our flour from, while some of the flour we use is not certified organic, it comes from a company that basically uses only organic. So they might have a little bit of commercially, conventionally grown grain in along with the organic that we're getting. And but it's so clean. I have friends who are have a gluten intolerance, but they can eat our bread and it doesn't cause them distress like store-bought bread.
And part of that is because of the using of sourdough, which is a natural fermentation. And by that fermentation, it partially digests these enzymes so that we can, the work is halfway done for us.
By the time you eat it.
By the time you eat it, it's half digested by the natural sourdough fermentation. Versus a soft commercial yeast that is just using quick rise commercial yeast to rise that bread. And then they're using
all sorts of conditioners,
super bleached, processed, bad glyphosate filled wheat.
Okay, speaking of yeast, Sky would like to know, why doesn't my dough rise sometimes? But more importantly, what's happening to make it rise when I do it the right way?
So I would say in troubleshooting that, there's a few reasons why. It could be old yeast. It could be too cold. It could be sometimes that maybe you're not developing your dough enough to retain the gas bubbles, right? So if your bread is underdeveloped, it can't keep or trap those air bubbles. So it might even be working, but you'd think it's some other reason. So those are, yeah. Temperature,
so you recommend,
definitely.
Temperature is a big one. So like trying each thing at a time and kind of like changing one variable to see what the problem is.
Yeah.
That's key. If you're trying to fine tune a recipe, only change one thing at a time. Otherwise, you're lost.
Yeah.
And take notes.
What is the ideal ambient temperature?
Well, I guess, as a standard, I'd say 72 to 76 degrees, but everybody's got different systems going on. If you want to make a loaf of bread over 2 days, you're going to do different temperatures than if you want to get it to proof over 2 hours. And if you're using a sourdough, or if you're using a certain amount of yeast, or if you're adding different pre-ferments on top of, there's like a few things you can be putting in there to achieve results. So you kind of look at what you want to create, and then you take the steps back. And so that's a hard one to answer.
Justice says, so that's science. Manipulate one variable, collect your data, try again.
And there's way too many times I still change formulas, like in too many steps. And then I'm like, oh, what did I do wrong? I was only supposed to change one thing.
When I read new recipes and there's something different in one and I get excited, I'm like, oh, and this sounded good too, and this. And then, exactly, you lose track.
So we've talked a lot about kind of plant side and growing side, but I wanted to skip over to since you're talking about plants right now, what's good to grow? Like if you're going to do your home garden, especially kind of in the Utah area, what gets a good yield? What could I potentially, I mean, not entirely because we're not good farmers anymore, but like what could I potentially sustain myself on a bit if I plant my garden right?
So kale is a really great one. You can be eating off of that all year round. I've got 100 plants I need to put in the ground now. I'm really excited to just constantly be eating kale. But this dry corn that I've got is a great one. Corn, it has high yields. You can grow it in 80 to 90 days if you get the right variety.
Really?
You can try a few different types. It's one of you get more grains for corn than you do per plant than you do for a lot of others. But wheat is really fun if you want to try that. Beans are really great. Green beans and dry beans. Broccoli is such a nutritive powerhouse. You have a freezer full of broccoli, you're going to just feel good, come winter time, you pull that out. And well, one crop that's really worth the tedious time is shelling peas. I don't know. What do you think? Potatoes.
Yeah, potatoes. A lot of people think of just russets, but Isaac, you know about potatoes.
Idaho.
Yeah. So there's russets which are great for frying because they have a lot of starch, and they're light. But there's a lot of nutritional value in red and golden Yukon potatoes that are denser and waxier. So they don't make such a great frying potato, but as far as nutritional value and yield per plant and ease, and then if you store them in a cool, dry place, you can last a whole winter. It definitely potatoes. And Amber actually grows a shitload of garlic.
Garlic and squash are good too.
Yeah.
How do you suggest people to store those kinds of things?
Well, you never want them to be too cold. Garlic will start to sprout if you chill it too much. So just in like a root cellar, most of these things in a root cellar. So you're thinking like 55 to 60 degrees, not too humid, pretty dry, dark. Not everybody has access to a root
but
cellar,
if you don't have that, you can always can your food, and
or freeze.
You think like, well, I can buy a can of peaches at the store. It's not the same nutritional value. They're super heating and super boiling, these things, and it breaks down a lot of the nutrition in it. I definitely recommend a local product, especially something in your backyard where you haven't sprayed it with poison. And there's a lot of nutritional value in eating something that was locally grown.
Are there any local places that you would recommend for canned goods like that? Or do you need to know somebody that does all of the canning?
No, I think it's like moonshine. The thing about it is that it's homegrown, it's home based.
You can't, yeah.
It's your mom doing it in her kitchen.
Even to buy it is so not economically feasible. Like, I'll do all your canning for you, but it'll cost you a lot of money.
Yeah.
Rightfully so.
What do you require to do good canning? Like, do I need to buy a pressure cooker and a bunch of fancy jars? And how could I can? How can I get started?
Well, the jars are a little bit of an investment, and honestly, I would suggest people start freezing first, because all you have to do are buy some Ziploc baggies.
Yeah.
And it's super easy to find the steps and process. It's a lot easier to freeze more than can. So, but to get started to can, you just need a big pot, some new jars, and
you see them in the grocery store this time of year.
Reliable recipes. You want to be careful about any canning you do. You want to make sure that you've got enough acid in there, and that you've filled your jar up enough, that you've water bathed it for a certain amount of time. So there's a science to it, that you want to follow protocols to help you avoid getting food poisoning. But there's the blue ball book of canning.
The blue ball book of canning.
Blue balls canning. Got it.
The hardest ones to wait for. What's surprising that you can freeze, and what are things that you can't freeze?
You can freeze peaches, slice them up, put them right in a bag in the freezer. Some things you can't freeze. Well, we choose not to freeze tomatoes. When you refrigerate and freeze tomatoes, it changes the flavor and the texture of them. So we always can tomatoes. Dehydrating tomatoes is a good one too. It's fun to dehydrate. Dehydrating's okay. Sometimes I spend way too much time dehydrating something I think is going to be really good. And
mushrooms, you don't want to freeze.
Yeah, don't freeze mushrooms.
Okay. Cool. And you guys you forage mushrooms, right? Do you still do that? Go up hiking and?
Yeah, we were searching this afternoon.
We were searching, we had to come home early because we were looking.
Yeah.
Yeah, right now is morel season.
Mm-hmm.
So in the spring, you'll start seeing morels and oyster mushrooms.
Mm-hmm. And we usually are able to find a really big couple of spots of, you find so many mushrooms.
Yeah.
That's how we feel. so we find enough that we dehydrate the mushrooms, a huge portion of the find, and use them throughout the year. I still have oyster mushroom powder from 2 years ago. I found, I don't know, like 12 pounds of oyster mushrooms. So dehydrated that, ground them all, and I just throw the powder in my cooking like all the time, and I still have it. It adds, you know, a depth of flavor to my dishes.
Huh. I didn't even think about that. So you powder it and you just throw it into soup or whatever you're making, and you still get some of that kind of earthy.
Yep.
My boss makes a lot of mushroom salt too. So if you have like the weird stem caps and the weird ends that you don't necessarily want to eat, you can just pack it in salt and then process it, and then you have that mushroom flavored salt.
Wow.
That's really cool. We have a question from Kate. What fruits do you recommend growing in Utah?
Fruits. Raspberries, strawberries, currants. You know, a lot of these fruits are perennial, so you need to have a place where you can start them. You're not going to get any yields for a couple years, so you know, you just have to keep that in mind. If you're somewhere you're only going to be for a year, probably don't grow any fruits, honestly. Blueberries are a bad one to try to grow in Utah, but we've got a strawberry and a raspberry patch going right now, and we like to go to the Mount Naomi farms and pick blackberries and grapes and raspberries and stuff. So
a lot of stone fruit. So stone fruit is
orchards all over
anything
the place
with a hard pit. So think cherries, apricots, peaches.
But apples are so great too.
Yeah, I would say this part of Utah is known for stone fruit.
Cool. I don't know if you guys do any like urban foraging or like keep your eyes peeled for stuff in town where you can go collect things. I recently got a hold of an app called Falling Fruit, so you can
cool.
log where people have like bushes or trees, especially because so many folks. I mean, we have some friends that they often are, you know, giving away as much as possible because now that their trees are producing regularly or what have you. They just have so much. So do you know of any maybe local networks or like services that people could check out to maybe get a hold of some of that when they can't grow their own?
No, I don't. Well, there's some USU.
Yeah, there's this program up at the university that you guys know Cafe Ibis.
Yeah.
So they're the owner's son. James, he started a program at the university that gets students to come and pick fruit that's been falling on the ground that people have in their yards that they don't need. So they take it all up to the university, and I think they freeze it and make jam out of it and feed poor students. So there's programs like that, and you know, roadside stands in the spring, and then there's always the Perry, Utah is known for the fruit highway.
Yeah, and there was like that green bus that goes around and takes ugly fruit.
It's a community gardening program.
Sorry, we have a truck.
Sorry.
That's okay. It wasn't that bad.
We've talked a lot about fruits and vegetables, and I think a big question a lot of people have is, why is my meat dry? Moving on to meat cooking.
Yeah, that's for you.
Why is my meat dry?
Can you help me with my meat, Robyn?
You talk about people drying their meat out all the time.
It depends on the cut or the type of meat, beef, pork, chicken, how you're preparing it, and what cut of meat it is. These are all very important variables.
What about what cut of meat it is?
What is there a most common thing that people do wrong?
Yeah, so
a lot of people burn their food. Don't do that.
They just cook it too long, and that's why it's dry.
Don't cook it. Don't cook it that long. Cook it less.
But should I be worried if I undercook? Like, what's the danger of pork, chicken, beef? Like, what's undercooked? What's dangerous to eat?
So beef, you can eat depending on the quality of beef. Okay, so some commercial beef like JBS, or Hormel or any of these
producers.
mass-produced grocery store products, I wouldn't eat raw, because you're taking cows from 30 different places and you're taking thousands of cows and you're processing them with the same machinery. So if one of them has E. coli, the risks of spreading E. coli is greater. But if I'm buying from a local butcher who is slaughtering animals at one small meat packing facility, my risks of E. coli are lower. If they're only slaughtering 10 cows a day versus 10,000 cows a day, that's the difference. Beef you can eat if it's good quality, anywhere from raw, from Carpaccio, to well done if you're President Trump. Pork is a different story. Pork and chicken, you're told you have to bring up to 160 degrees. If it's good quality pork, if you order a nice bone-in, farm-raised, local, grass-fed pork chop in a high-end restaurant, they'll serve it to you medium well with a little bit of pink in it. And then if you're doing roasts, tougher cuts of meat that have a lot of collagen, like a pork shoulder or a bone-in, beef something, you're going to need to cook it for a longer period of time versus a steak that you quick sear or a chicken breast that you're searing to just cook through.
So tell me about this resting period that my dad preaches about, that he will take someone down if they get too close to the meat after he's taken it off of the barbecue.
Yeah, so you can see it if you poke a turkey, like think of your Thanksgiving turkey, and if you poke a thermometer in it and you pull that thermometer out, you can watch the juices run out. So you don't want to cut into hot meat, is the rule, and that's the reason for resting. When you cut into hot meat, all the moisture and the juices run out of it. But if you give that meat time to rest, then it gives the muscle fibers time to absorb that liquid back into itself versus just cutting it when it's ripping hot and watching that moisture drain out.
Cool.
So what temperature should you wait until it's cooled off to?
So the larger the piece of meat, the longer you're going to need to wait.
Okay.
I would say, depending on where you're serving it, if you're taking it in your car and you're taking it to a picnic area, or, you're staring at it on your stovetop's top because you just pulled it out of the oven. I would honestly let it come down to warm to the touch. Test it with the back of your hand. Warm to the touch is appetizing. Warm meat is good, but almost room temperature. Don't cut into it when it's too hot. Cool. It'll be dry.
Cool. We had a couple of comments. So the Green Urban Lunchbox is what I was thinking of for the Salt Lake area. And then Kat also mentions the Buy Nothing Your Neighborhood Facebook groups. So like Buy Nothing Rose Park. So you can find like that to get like fruits and other things. So we are getting close to being done with time. So we probably should have y'all come back sometime when we can chat more about animals and stuff. But Kat asks, what's your favorite fruit to cook with, not bake?
Tomato. Definitely tomato.
Yeah.
I love tomatoes. Just the lycopene that you can feel like in your body in the cold months. You remember what sunshine feels like. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, samesies. Tomato. It's full of nitrates and nitrites, which you often see those in curatives. But it's because these plants like those nitrite-rich soils, so they have a lot of those in them, and it creates those umami, savory complexes that that a tomato has. That super savory umami flavor is that enjoyable element and compound in the tomato.
I've been baking with bananas a lot, though. I just wanted to talk about bananas and baking. Do it. That's all. Before we're
I'm
done.
definitely a banana bread addict. It actually upsets me that I can't go to a grocery store and take their old bananas that they aren't going to sell. They won't let you have them.
No, they throw them away.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is there anything else that you feel like our general public audience would benefit from knowing?
If you want pork in the next couple of weeks,
Get it?
buy it now.
And hopefully you've got a freezer.
Yeah. That's real. If somebody doesn't have enough freezer space, like just real quick, how else could they preserve, like salting, drying meat? Like, is there a good, or does that take quite a bit of work?
It does take quite a bit of work. I made 2 prosciuttos from our wedding pig recently, and it takes a lot of space. Salamis, if you keep, so think of your dried salamis. If you keep that 60 degrees or below, you should be fine.
I like jerky.
Beef jerky.
Yeah. Bring it back.
Awesome. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Let's summon Sky and Justice back to close this out with anything that they want to talk about their goddamn pizza again. Oh, and y'all are on mute.
No fair. No fair.
You're muted.
Can't hear you.
You're muted.
Hey, if you all were in Salt Lake City, we would have been able to deliver you some pizza, but unfortunately we weren't able to. So,
Okay, we'll be back soon.
next time any of y'all are in Salt Lake, lunch is on us. So.
Oh, thank you.
Well, this has been really cool. So I've learned a lot so far. Yeah, this has been great. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to have this great conversation. Yeah. So we do want to talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing next. So since we don't know what's going to happen with the whole curve and everything, but we do know that for at least the next week or so, we're going to keep doing cool events. So next week on Tuesday, we have Lucilla Fernandez and Molly Warner. They are representing the Tracy Aviary, and they are going to be actually talking about the Lights Out initiative, why we need to turn our lights off and keep dark skies going to help bird migrations, especially through the Utah corridor at this time of year. And then what's extra cool is on May 8th, we are 9th, excuse me.
Saturday, whatever the Saturday is.
Saturday, yeah, May 9th. May 9th. So May 9th, we're going to do partner with Tracy Aviary on a trivia night over Zoom. So we will send out ways that people can join that and compete for having like a bar trivia, except the bar is your house. So
you can drink as much as you want. You can have a double.
Yeah.
No one can stop you.
And you don't have to take a lift home.
Way cheaper. I know, we've been saving so much money, honestly. Yeah. I don't know if I'm going to go back, It's like, why spend so much money at bars?
Yeah, I love being
You want to support restaurants like Crumb Brothers. They're amazing. I lived off them when I lived up in Logan. I also am realizing how much I appreciate cooking at home and cooking for friends. And so actually I've learned a lot of great pointers tonight about that. So.
He made El Pastor for me last night.
I did. Yeah, first try. It worked out all right. And it was with all that cheap pork. It's so cheap right now.
Yeah, so right now you'll see a dip in the price because they're trying to sell what they have on hand. And then you'll start seeing it rise.
Because it's coming from further and further away, kind of, right?
Do you know?
No, it's because they're closing the processing plants.
Yeah, they have started doing some import. There was a Texas fella with a Demand USA Beef website about trying to make sure that we can reopen our processing plants because
actually it's probably the best thing to happen to this country ever if we can't eat meat anymore.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Cool. I've had so much fun. We could talk for hours, and I would love to have y'all back sometime. So hopefully we can do that for another one of these streams. But yeah, thank you.
And as always, this will be available to watch afterwards on YouTube and Facebook, and to share with your friends and everything like that. Yeah, how do you do?
Cool. We'll flash our Menden gang signs.
Menden.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.